Hi, students. I wanted to take a moment to go through highlights of Darwin's journey. And as you can see on the screen here, this is the route that the HMS Beagle took. Darwin began this journey when he was about 22 years old, and he was a member of the crew for 5 years. Now, as I said before, that does not mean that he was on board the ship for 5 years straight. As you can see, there were a lot of stops, and every stop, Darwin would spend weeks, sometimes months, at that particular location as the ship was repaired, as more supplies were gotten, and as they were exploring these particular places. The main purpose of the voyage was to really map out the southern tip of South America. As I said, there's a lot of challenges of finding ideal locations to dock. And so having the most accurate map possible would be good for England, and it would help commerce and the British Royal Navy. So Darwin began this voyage all the way across the Atlantic down to the south into Brazil and into Bahia and to Rio and Montevideo. And he would spend sometimes months there. At times he was able to even rent a house to spend time there and really get to know the area and explore and acquire specimens. I'm going to fast forward to the time that he spent in this area here in the south, the Tierra del Fuego. And this is really one of the important spots. In Tierra del Fuego, Darwin had found these giant armadillo fossils. So you can see here, this is on the right, that is a standard armadillo that we are able to see today, rather tiny. This gigantic armadillo is extinct. And so Darwin found these armadillos, these, I believe they're called glypterodons. Don't quote me on that, it is not the perfect pronunciation. And he naturally had questions. Why are these gone? Why are these extinct? What happened to them? Why are these smaller armadillos still around? So that was a question that was sort of occupying his mind over the years that he spent traveling. And his voyage continued on even after he collected those specimens. So from there, going around Tierra del Fuego, going along, this would be Chile. He arrived at the Galapagos Islands. Now, the Galapagos Islands are a series of about 18 small islands, and these islands were untouched by humankind. And among the things that he discovered there were these birds that were all very similar, but had particularly different beaks. So Darwin, in investigating, sketched the beaks and sketched the birds. And we see here that these birds are fairly similar in most regards, but the thing that is most prominent is the differences in their beaks. You can see that these are, on the bottom, the beaks of these birds are significantly smaller, but a lot of their other features are fairly similar. So Darwin collected specimens of these birds and brought them back to England and had experts help him to look at them. And the conclusion was that these birds were all different species. They were not just variations of the same species. They were different enough that we could categorize them as being related, but not the same species. You can see here a photo of several of these different finches that exist within the Galapagos Islands, and they really exist nowhere else. In all of South America, which is humongous, there is only one type of finch, the most common type of finch is the finch on the lower right-hand corner of this sketch, and that is what was found in South America. All of these other finches were unique to the Galapagos Islands. So Darwin wanted to understand why there were all of these unique finches in such a small landmass or series of land masses. And the conclusion that he came to was what we now call the theory of evolution via natural selection. We'll spend time talking about this, but the basic idea is that every environment, every single one of these islands had its own particular conditions, and those conditions were favorable to individuals within the finch population with particular traits. So perhaps whichever island the larger beaked finches exist on were ideal for prying open seeds and nuts and other similar foods that would require greater leverage in order to break open. Whereas finches with larger or thinner beaks would be more well suited to prying out bugs from wood or worms from the ground or other such type of food. So as each island had a unique set of environments, each finch essentially would be adapted or suited for a particular island. And if a finch was born without that particular trait, then the finch essentially had two options: fly to another island or die. So over time, over thousands and tens of thousands of years, what would happen is each island would have a uniquely featured finch. And give it long enough time, those accumulation of traits would result in individual populations becoming so different that they would really be categorized as different species. They no longer were able to mate with one another because of the various differences in the finches. So as you can see, there's a difference in beak size, there's slightly difference in size, there's other differences. So maybe the time in which these finches operate. Some of them might operate more in the nighttime, some of them might operate in the daytime. Long story short, as the differences in traits accumulated over a long period of time, these populations that started as a single type of finch became so different that we could no longer classify them as being part of the same species.